All right, let's bring in Bret Baier joining on the phone with this breaking news. Bret, of course, we just found out. Thanks so much. Well, Ben, you can stick around. Thanks so much, Bret, for joining us. The first off, Nikki Haley at 10 o'clock today will make an announcement. According to Wall Street Journal, she's going to drop out of the race, and she will delay endorsing Donald Trump, if at all.
Yeah, good morning. We are hearing that as well. And you know, this is what had been expected after the results of Super Tuesday, winning Vermont, but losing all the other contests. She then suspends her campaign with wins in the District of Columbia and Vermont. The part about not endorsing Donald Trump, I think, will probably be vexing for some in the Republican Party. And we'll see how she phrases it and how that all comes about. But suspending the campaign brings essentially this race to an end, and Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee with just a few delegates to go before clinching it mathematically.
That's right. Bret, quoting the Wall Street Journal article, it says, and we know this first part, Haley won't announce an endorsement Wednesday, the people close to the campaign said. But this is the part I want your comment on. Haley will encourage Donald Trump, who is close to having the delegates needed to win the Republican nomination, to earn the support of Republicans and independent voters who backed her. What does she want to happen with that?
Well, Steve, I mean, this could be a negotiating ploy. Who knows? I don't think she's on the top of the list for VP. At least that's the sense you get from Trump world and the former president himself. But I do think that this sounds like a negotiating point, and there's got to be some unity messaging here in this speech, because that's, I think, what the Republican Party is yearning for.
Yeah. So, Bret, I'm so sorry, Nancy, go ahead. When you look at the tea leaves, and you've covered this for years, how bloody was this process? Is it comparable to any other moment in time where there can be some repair?
Yeah, listen, Lawrence, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush were pretty ugly at times and ran some really tough campaign ads against each other. Maybe not as pointed elbows as we got to at the end here, but it was ugly. Obviously, they came back together and became a ticket. Not sure that's going to happen this time. And I think how she talks about this morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, is going to be crucial. And also how the former president reacts to that. If it irks him and he reacts, it's one thing. Right. And I think you saw his speech last night. I do think that there was an effort. Yeah, there was an effort to kind of specifically avoid that topic until he figured out what exactly was happening.
Bret, usually when we see candidates mend their relationship, it's when they need one another. Look at Ted Cruz. It was a battle, talking about each other's wives.
Until May.
Right, and then Ted Cruz needed him down in Texas. Donald Trump went down there and helped him with that race when he was running against Beto O'Rourke, and we've seen that time and time again. And so if they don't need each other, do you think the question is, if Nikki Haley wants to continue and have a future in politics, then maybe they can come together because maybe they'll need each other down the road?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ainsley, and that is a great analogy as well. Ted Cruz, he went all the way to the convention. You remember he gave that speech on the floor, and then the Trump family walked in and sat there while he was speaking? I mean, that was pure drama.
Vote your conscience.
That's right, but I think that I think it is possible. It's just a matter of figuring out how you can scratch each other's back. And I'm not sure that VP is the one.
You know, it's interesting. What Kellyanne Conway said is that Jared and Ivanka are really tight with the Haley family.
But Don Jr., remember, has tweeted he doesn't like her. He doesn't want her to be.
No chance she should be vice president.
Should be vice president. But they were close. I remember the first she came down, and before she called President Trump before she ran, she said, listen, I'm going to reverse my decision. I'm going to go run. And basically the same thing Tim Scott did. I'm going to go run too. But it looked like Haley, who started in single digits, ends up being the #1 contender for the next 3 months. That's when she changed her tone. And that's when she began to make a difference because she, as Gavin Newsom said, ended up being the best surrogates the Democrats had. His quote was, "I hope she stays in the race as long as possible." So that takes the nuance out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And listen, the wins she had, Vermont and District of Columbia, those are places where Democrats could walk in and vote for Nikki Haley. And it didn't feel like there was this big Republican outpouring. There is a part of her support that is skeptical Trump or anti-Trump. He probably does have to mend that in order to get all of the votes he needs come November. But the question is how he does that, and is it start today?
You know, Bret, the concerning thing for me is there's clearly a split in the Republican Party. Donald Trump represents a new Republican Party. It looks like Nikki Haley got that 25% that want to return to the traditional Republican Party. Is that party dead now after the clinching of the nomination basically last night? Or does Donald Trump need to welcome that part of the party in?
I think to win in November, because of where we're seeing the approval numbers across the board, he'll have to make some outreach. You know, if he said, she's going to be in my cabinet, or there's going to be a future for Nikki Haley, or here's what my cabinet looks like, there is a large part of making people feel comfortable, especially people who may look at January 6th and other things and say, I have a problem with this, but I love this policy.
So I thought it was a very learned moment, too. Ari Fleischer said last night, he said in the 2000 campaign, things were bitter between Bush and McCain. He says Bush made peace with McCain, but it was still very unsteady. And he argued that the only Bush got really hurt by that, and that's why the election with Gore obviously went into overtime and was so very close. So it's hard to walk back some of those comments. I remember the South Carolina debate, and that went a lot longer. I believe Bush 41 and Reagan went into May, and he ended up being the running mate there, voodoo economics. So he went down to the fundamentals of how he was going to transform America. And the one thing, Lawrence, I don't think Nikki Haley is that different from Trump, except for maybe the foreign policy. But when it comes to the border, when it comes to fiscal responsibility, when it comes to being tough on China, which was not really the foundation of the old was not the foundation of the old Republican Party.
Okay, we have independently confirmed she is suspending, like you said, Bret. You said you were hearing that, too. What do you make of her saying, I'm not going to immediately endorse Trump? Why not?
Well, I just think it's a negotiating ploy. We haven't heard the speech yet, obviously, Ainsley, but I do think that this is an effort to figure out her way forward. And whether it is inside the Trump administration or outside, I think she wants to make a splash. I do think that there's a very short window here of grace period that Republicans will want to get together and start fighting this fight against President Biden, because that is the ultimate goal. As you get ready to hear the president on Thursday for the State of the Union, he is a weakened president. If you look at independents and every other poll, he is upside down on every issue.
He does not think so.
The opportunity is there.
He does not think so. He said it yesterday. He said, we only report the polls that have him losing. I guess there was a Quinnipiac poll that had him up. Yeah, everyone. There was 5 in a row. And where it is behind the scenes, he doesn't want to hear it. He feels as though he is winning. That's tough to convince a president that you got to come from behind.
Yeah, and it's also tough to convince a former president that you need half the party that he doesn't think he needs. But I do think that that's getting through, and it's some of the messaging that you're hearing from the former president.
All right.
Thanks,
Bret Baier. Bret, did we wake you up when we called you?
I am getting in the car to go to D.C.
You did
good car.
I'm all good.
All right.
Such a boss.
All right.
Do you want to use my plane?
Bret Baier. He's probably getting in a car to go to your plane.
Go ahead. I left it running, Bret, just in case.
Bret, last night the coverage was excellent. Thank you so much for everything. Thanks for waking up early.
Team effort.
Okay. I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.